Everyone made it, that's good. Oh, have I got a microphone? It sounds like I have a microphone. It does sound echoey, doesn't it? It feels like a... Okay. Oh, there we go. That was all planned. That was intentional. Yeah, that's why I'm over here. Okay, yeah, but welcome everyone. Thanks for coming to the event today. As you can see on screen, we're here to discuss how to recruit, retain and grow talented women in STEM. This is a joint event with WISE and Pfizer. My name's Jack. I'm Head of Products and Services at WISE, focusing on diversity and inclusion, pronouns he, him. And I'm going to do a little bit of housekeeping and introduce the agenda, and I'll hand over to our speakers for the day. So there's no fire alarm planned today, so if it goes off, then it's a real fire. And if it does go off, you go back through the doors here, out the main entrance, and there's a marshal point over that way, like past the car park. We are going to be recording the event today, so if you don't want to be photographed, please let the photographer know, and the camera that's recording is just here, so that it's quite easily avoidable. If you don't want to be recorded for whatever reason, just let us know. Everything today is on the ground floor, so you should find it accessible. If you need an inclusive space for sort of any well-being or worship needs, there's not a designated one, but we can get one on request, so just let us know. And there's no hearing loop because there's no AV today, so hopefully our booming voices will hopefully help with that. Please turn your phone to silent. I mean, I guess we're not in the film theatre, you know, if you've got a phone call you need to take, that's absolutely fine, but if you just keep it on like silent, that'll be great. Toilets, if you just go out this door and then through the little archway there, the first door on the right, just there, so just around the corner. And without further ado, I'll just take us through the agenda for the day. Hopefully you've all had a chance to get a tea or coffee, and there's some pastries at the back as well, so you can help yourself to those throughout the day. I'm Jack, I'm doing the welcome, and I'm going to hand over to Liz Collins, who's going to do a quick introduction from Pfizer too. And then Liz will hand over to our first speaker, Rebecca Jackson from Pfizer. I'll then come up and quickly introduce Charlotte, our second speaker from Philips 66. We'll do a bit of a Q&A for 20 minutes after both the speakers have had a chance to talk, and then we'll have a networking and light lunch. Once lunch is finished, we'll come back and we're going to have some discussions around how EDI experts can support your diversity goals, and we're going to have 3 stations, and we're going to focus on those areas of how they can support recruitment, how they can support retention, and how they can support growth and development as well. And then we'll come together, and the facilitators on each of the tables, so that'll be me and my colleagues Catherine and James, will come and do a little presentation of the summary of the kind of key points that we spoke about in our respective areas, the key takeaways, and then we'll be finishing at 3 o'clock today. So without further ado, I'll hand over to, not to Rebecca, I'll leave it on this screen, give this to you.
Oh gosh, I don't know whether I can be in charge of that.
You just press the down one. Don't press the right arrow.
So I'm going to leave it for Rebecca to do that. So I'm going to make this really quick because we've got loads to get through today. So I guess on behalf of Pfizer and Discovery Park House, it's really great to welcome those people who are here as visitors. I know there's some people who are here who work in Discovery Park House and others who've come specifically for this event. So I guess briefly a little bit about me. So I work for Pfizer. We have about 450 people here working in our pharmaceutical sciences area, and another 200 odd people working here in regulatory and other parts of supporting our pharmaceutical industry here on site. I have a leadership role here on site, and so it gives me great pleasure actually to welcome you all to this. It's an area that I am very passionate about not just how we can recruit women into the workforce, but how we can keep them there, and what we need to do to keep women there, and how we can really leverage the skills that women can bring to our workforce and take full advantage of them. So I am not going to go on very long because I know Rebecca is going to talk all about what we do at Pfizer. We are in a really privileged position, I would say, at Pfizer, that we have resources that we can dedicate to really improving diversity, equity and inclusion across all of our business. So we've got Rebecca here who's going to talk about gender pay gap. We've also got Rachel here with us today who's our UK DEI lead. So we want to share that privilege with maybe some of the small and medium-sized enterprises here who maybe don't have all of that, and we can share our knowledge, and we'd love to hear from you as well to make us collectively better at retaining women in the workforce. So with that, I'm going to hand over to Rebecca. She's going to talk a little bit about what we do at Pfizer and how we support our goals. So have a great day. I apologise, I can't stay very long. I need to head off just after 12, but I look forward to catching up with the Pfizer folk afterwards, and I'm sure it'll be a great success. Right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Liz. Okay, so this is me. So I've worked at Pfizer for over 20 years, but my journey, we were just laughing about.
We were just saying anything over 20 years you don't mention anymore. Just say it's over 20 years.
But actually, one of the things that I did in preparation for this event, which I found really helpful to me, was reframe my career journey through Pfizer, which started in medicinal sciences, developing new medicines for patients, was to reframe my career journey through the work that I've done around diversity and equity and inclusion. I've always felt that it's really important to be a role model, and I've always seen the value in having role models. And honestly, I may have pushed this too far, because I've got two girls, two daughters, and I remember when they were in primary school going in to help out and saying, I'm Dr. Jackson. So I haven't taken my husband's name either. So my daughter, Rachel Waite, her kids would come over and go, Dr. Mrs. Rachel's mum, can you help? So I just became Dr. Mrs. Rachel's mum. And maybe I was over confusing it, but I thought, I'm a woman, I'm a doctor, I am going to be this role model for these children in this room. And so right through there, through work, I've got involved in the Social Mobility Foundation, being a mentor there. Most recently was a co-lead of our Open CRG here, a colleague resource group for our LGBT colleagues. And that was the platform that led me into this role now, where I'm leading diversity, equity, inclusion for Pfizer in the UK. And I also want to extend my welcome to Iram. Iram is a student from the University of Kent, based in Canterbury, but she's spending a placement year with Pfizer now as an undergraduate. So do please talk to both of us during the break. We'd really love to hear what you're doing and share some ideas with you. And thanks for coming to support me, Iram. I think it's important to set the tone and understand our company values. The culture that we have across our global corporation is really summarised in these very 4 succinct value statements. Courage, because breakthroughs only start by challenging convention, especially in the face of uncertainty and adversity, and so we need to think big and we need to speak up. Excellence, because we can only change patients' lives when we perform at our best and when we do that together. Equity, which we're going to talk more about, because we really do believe that every person who works at Pfizer and every patient that we support deserves to be seen and heard and cared for. And this only happens when we're inclusive and we act with integrity. And then joy, because we give a lot of ourselves to work and we expect to get a lot back. So this really happens on actually events like today, where we get to come along and we get to introduce ourselves and meet people, recognise the work that we do, and celebrate and have a bit of fun. And we have, I think in the country, about 2,500 colleagues working for Pfizer in the UK. And we do come in all shapes, sizes, colours. We've got different social backgrounds, different educational backgrounds. And it's vitally important that every single colleague feels that they are seen and valued and heard. And we talk a lot about equality and equity and inclusion, so I wanted to take a moment just to talk about those definitions. And hopefully this isn't new to you, but if it's not new to you, it should be interesting to you. Equality on the left-hand side really focuses on giving everybody the same resources. So these 3 people, they've all been given a front row seat or standing point at the fence. They can look at whatever's in that beautiful green field on the other side, if they can see over it. They've all got exactly the same place to stand, but you can see that the outcomes are anything but the same for those individuals. Equity is subtly but importantly different from equality, because it really focuses on the outcomes. You can see by the simple provision of a couple of cardboard boxes or wooden boxes to stand on, actually all 3 people now have an equal and fair view over the fence. But actually, if you take it even a step further and think, how do you really be inclusive? You can redesign the fence so that you can just look straight through it. And this means that everybody gets the same outcome. And actually, importantly, nobody is disadvantaged by taking this approach. Now, we might see this as being maybe a family going out to the park. But what if these 3 people were women and girls trying to look out at their next STEM career opportunity? The boxes in those cases might be things like access to really inspiring STEM education, or access to a role model or a mentor. Maybe it's access to a job vacancy because it's been posted, I don't know, not in the usual Red Brick University websites, but actually it's been posted in Pink Farmer or Black Farmer news outlets. Some different recruitment places where other people are going to see that job vacancy. And perhaps the vacancy has been written in language that makes sense to people because it describes the work that needs to be done and not the person that we're trying to hire. So there's masses that can be done in this space. And of course the businesses and the infrastructure and the policies have a massive part to make that happen, but it also falls down, I think, to colleagues like you and I, because we're the people and the colleagues on the ground that implement those policies and use those policies to develop our culture. So as well as thinking about the business practices and challenging them if you see gaps in them, even reflecting on the language that we're all individually using. As an example, it's easy to talk about diverse colleagues when actually what we mean is they're non-white. And that framing just puts white people as the default. So make sure that we're using diverse to mean different, meaning variety. We're a diverse group of people in the room because it's more than one. And also things, ableist attitudes, that is where we find ourselves making judgments possibly about somebody else's abilities. It's not our place to make those judgments. It's much better to ask a colleague, we think you're great, what do you need? What can we put in place so that you can come and work for us? And I like this phrase, but shifting our thinking when we're recruiting away from cultural fit, which is a statement I've grown up with in my career, and thinking about cultural add. What can someone add to the team's culture? Not how are they going to fit in? How are they going to actually disrupt our norms, and what values can they bring that are different? And that's how we'll start to break down some of the barriers, one block at a time. Of course, once we've got those colleagues into our organisations, we want to try and keep them. So I wanted to just put one slide up about our colleague resource groups. We've got 5 at Pfizer, so there's the Ethnic Diversity Group, Pfizer Women's Resource, Open, which support the LGBT colleagues. IGM is interesting because they look at intergenerational mobility, recognising that now more than ever we've got people across wider age ranges and generational ranges. We've all grown up with technology in very, very different ways, as just one example. But thinking about what opportunities does that bring to the workplace and what barriers might that bring that need to be overcome. And then disability, which takes into account people's physical abilities, but also increasingly thinking about colleague mental health and mental wellness. So our colleague resource groups, they're a really powerful resource for the colleagues to provide information and networking opportunities. They all have their own individual focus, but they all have also this very shared common goal, which is around achieving equity and equality for all of our colleagues at Pfizer. One of the ways that we measure how well we're doing on all this is the pay gap. So this is where I brought my flip chart as it is. I'll try and draw a quick diagram, but if we're getting it right, when you slice through our organisation, you should see men and women equally distributed across the organisation. And we know that at Pfizer, like most big companies in the UK, we have a gender pay gap. It's in favour of the men. So what this means for our median is if we, let's see, I haven't done this live before, so I hope it works out. But if you map your salaries, I guess from from top to bottom, I don't know, let's say we've got one at the top, one there, a couple here, and then we'll put 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay. So if these are the males in the organisation, we're trying to represent that we've got senior male colleagues spread down through the organisation to more people at lower paid positions. Okay, I think it's nothing special about this. I think it's a fairly standard distribution. And if we do the same for our female colleagues, what we typically find is that we've got our senior females are slightly lower than our males. We may actually have more people down here at the lower end of the pay spectrum, and we don't have quite so many coming through the ranks. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay, we've got another one down here at the bottom, 10. So, you know, this is just how we standardise how we would represent this is calculated using hourly rates, colleague hourly rates. So if we're looking at the median, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, this is our median male salary, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, our median female salary. You know, this basically is the gap. Okay, so that's the median pay gap that we're measuring. And I wanted to just share that kind of culture. I mean, we're STEM, so maths is an important one. I think median, reminding myself even what the median is was useful. But I'll come back to that as I talk about the pay gap that we have at Pfizer. But I wanted to share some of the strategies that we've had in place to close this gap, because we've been reporting this for the last 5 years, since it became mandatory for organisations over, I think, 250 employees. Now have to report it to the HMRC. So our strategies, ensuring recruitment diversity, because if we're getting people coming into the organisation, we need to really start there. Almost not move into the interview stage until we know that we've got a selection of candidates in our pool that is as diverse as the organisation that we're trying to, the community around us essentially. Creating a trusting and flexible workplace culture, because when colleagues are here, we want them to stay. Family-friendly practices throughout the family life cycle, recognising that we all go through a lot if we're spending time at Pfizer and we need different support at different times. A career support programme, and a long-term absence return support, thinking about people who've been on long-term sickness absence or maternity leave, for example. I think in the interest of time, I've got a slide on each of these, which I'll just go through really quickly, but we'll come back to any of these points maybe in the discussion parts if people want more information about it. But so one of the things we did around, in order to get this diversity of recruitment stage, was actually to put all our information around recruitment into one place so that it's more easily accessible for all our hiring managers. And we are actually seeing an increase, we're monitoring, we see an increase in the number of women who are applying for our internal roles, and we're seeing a rise in the number of people being appointed, the number of women being appointed into those senior manager roles. To create the trusting and flexible workplace, we spent a lot of time in previous years, particularly coming out of the pandemic, thinking about what flexible working really means for us now, and trying to approach this as a team, so that as a group, a team can have a conversation about what they need as individuals from flexible working, but also how they're going to balance the business deliverables and get a common understanding, so that nobody in the team feels that someone's not pulling their weight, and nobody feels that they're being asked to do too much. And we tried to embed this into the business, so that we had career champions leading these flexible working programs and coming out with with a team pact on the end of it. Family-friendly practices. Particular couple of examples to highlight: we've had a menopause program launched relatively recently, and a really popular buddy scheme where we encourage people who are going through any particular life events to buddy up with other people who are going through similar things so that they can share experiences and provide some support. The career support program has been a series of workshops. We wanted to encourage all our colleagues to take a sense of ownership of their own careers and to reflect on where did they see their career going, what was holding them back, to be better at self-advocating, which I think everybody finds uncomfortable. But the career program support, the programs that we put in place, really started to make a difference that we hope, particularly to women coming through the organisation and thinking about signing up to future roles. Family-friendly practices. The main thing about this is just to remind ourselves that the modern family takes many different guises. So the policies are very deliberately written in a very open and flexible manner so that people can apply them to their own circumstances and not find that they're falling outside because of the design of their family. So I'm going different. Okay. And then long-term absence, return and support. As I said, recognising people coming back from maternity leave, people who've been out of the business for a period of time, may need some real personalised support coming back in. And it's a really important area to get right because these are often the colleagues that as an organisation, I promise I'm not touching this. It's telling me to hurry up. We want to retain these colleagues because we've invested in them and we know that they have skills and knowledge that we want to keep in the business. We measure our progress. So we measure colleague awareness through our internal social media communication channels. We measure engagement, so the number of hits and likes that we have on our internal social media SharePoint sites, for example. We measure how many people sign up for the training, how many people attend the training. Most importantly, from my perspective, when it comes to this pay gap, is measuring the number of applications from females that we see to our job positions, particularly the vacancies that are posted at these higher hourly rate roles, and recruitment. So we want to see those applications turned into actual appointments. One of the reasons this is important, it's a business challenge that we're facing, is that if you read the life sciences skills strategy, we're working in a growth sector. There's 133,000 new roles projected to come into our industry in the next 10 years. And we want to be competitive in that space. STEM subjects are key as skills. The traditional ones that we're used to, the science, technology, engineering and maths, but also an increasing number of new areas, things like artificial intelligence for one, and data sciences coming through the system, and we need to be ready for that. The impact of the work that we're doing has been that our pay gap has halved since we started calculating it in 2018. But you'll see in 2022 it went up again from 7.5 to 11.3. And I wanted to draw the diagram because what happened in 2022 was that Pfizer closed one of its manufacturing sites. So a number of the men in our lower hourly rate part of the organisation left, which drove the median, I've taken 4 out of there, it drives the median salary higher. And that, as you can see, increases this gap. So it's a really good, I think, way to visualise that the impact that some business decisions can have on what we're trying to do around closing the pay gap. And we can do a lot of, all of those different strategies do an awful lot, I think, and have been working, and we're committed to staying with those. But, sometimes something else happens and we have to figure out what that was, diagnose it, and then work out how to move on. Okay, my last comment, I think, was just to remind the group, as we talk about bringing women into science and engineering, I want to remind us that, you know, women come in all shapes and colours and sizes and abilities, and we all have different backgrounds. And we should use our platform to make sure that we don't leave any of those talented females behind. Okay, thank you.
Hopefully the phantom clicker won't affect me. Well, thank you so much for that. It was lovely to hear two things that I always talk about that are really important. One is measuring impact of EDI work, which is super important across any sort of element of the EDI agenda, but then also talking about that team-based approach, particularly to flexible working, because a lot of organisations, you know, will have finance colleagues and maintenance colleagues and manufacturing colleagues to whom flexible working is going to apply very differently. And so having like these blanket policies is always a bit of trying to make a one-size-fits-all for an issue that really isn't that, so it's good to hear that approach. And I think those kind of 5 areas will be really good to discuss more in the afternoon when we do our sort of breakout sessions as well. So without further ado, I'll hand over to our next speaker, Charlotte.
Come up behind here.
Right, so hello, I'm Charlotte Atkinson. I'm a process engineer at Phillips 66 Humber Refinery, so just up near Hull, if anyone's heard of that, quite far away from here. So I'm currently a process engineer for our aromatics conversion units. I don't know if anyone has a background in refining, but sort of past the crude unit, sort of when you're taking your product streams. Previous to that, I did my Masters in Chemical Engineering in 2013 at University of Manchester. And since then I've held various different process engineering roles, firstly at Total and then at Phillips 66. So about 7 years experience in the industry, so a lot newer than the 20 years that you guys were talking about earlier. So I've just got an interactive little starter for us today. So if I say the word allyship to you, what sort of comes to mind? Is it being a friend? Is it supporting a cause? I don't know if anyone wants to freely shout out what they think of. I want to try and make this a bit interactive.
Supporting.
Yes, yes,
Having people in your corner.
yes, very much so.
Giving a voice to people.
That's probably the most important thing. Yes, definitely. And there are lots of other different things. And hopefully this word and anything that we've spoken about just now have sparked any sort of ideas and been able to have some sort of internal brainstorm that can mean anything around allyship. And what you're thinking about will probably mean something completely different to the person next to you or anyone else in this room. We've probably got hundreds of collective ideas here today. I know it was a bit brief, but we have got a bit of conversation and talk flowing, right? So, as we've sort of said, allyship can be all of these things that we've just mentioned and so much more. So, I'm not going to say this description of what being an ally is, except for that an ally is someone who actively works and supports and advocates for and with those in a marginalised group that they're not personally part of. And I think that's really important, and that's the sort of basis that we've sort of gone for as being an ally. So I've actually taken this definition directly from the Institute of Engineering and Technology last year, and I think it's a really important description because it's actually showing a lot of how the industry is moving and changing, looking at its culture of inclusion and diversity, for the fact that this is coming from, you know, an engineering body. And I think rather than seeing that from just a blanket body, this is engineering is actually recognising and seeing this, and I think that's really important. So we want to have a discussion about allyship. it's one of these things, it's been around for a while, but in reality it's relatively new. Not a lot of sites actually openly talk about this, or at least my site sort of in recent history at least. So again, I thought I'd start this talk off today with a bit of a teaser of one of the examples that we're using at Humber Refinery to try and get the conversation flowing. It's one of the examples that we're trying to get more widespread change in the culture where we live and work. We also use these different tools to try and make this a better place, not only for supporting the actual work that we do, but also to support you no matter what your gender, your ethnicity, your sexual orientation, or the background that you're from. So promoting allyship at Humber is really in its infancy at the moment, so I'll sort of talk to you more about how we've gone about it. But starting those conversations like we've had today, you know, not really many people want to talk, it can be hard. And so a lot of people in this room may or may not have heard of a safety moment. It's something in industry that's used quite widely to sort of learn from, you know, safety experiences, things that go right, things that go wrong. But at Humber Refinery, we're also now trying to use that same preface of learning from a safety moment and trying to integrate an inclusion and diversity, or I&D moment, in all of our meetings and discussions. And what does that look like in reality? Probably exactly what you're thinking. A lot of awkward faces in the room, a lot of people normally looking at the few, in my experience, few females in the room going, oh, well, what have you thought of? Or, you know, anyone else that may be outwardly spoken and advocate for a lot of these topics. But in reality, it's something that we can all do. It doesn't matter who you are, you can start these conversations and you can advocate. But sometimes, again, just need a little bit of a nudge, like we had here today, and sometimes just one word can be that sort of thing. It can be any word when we use these. We have these cards that we use, I'll go a little bit more into them. They can say anything on them, and you pretty much just say, it doesn't have to be inclusion and diversity related, but just it gets people talking. And normally then that sort of gets the conversation flowing, just like hopefully we have here today. So, why is it very important to promote allyship, particularly for women in STEM? And how did Humber actually arrive at the point in which we needed an allyship programme? So in December 2022, we kicked off our official start of what we are now calling our allyship programme, which was born out of the ideology that the site recognised a need for a change in culture and a need for a change in opinions, which is akin to a lot of the industry in general. I can only really speak for refining, but I'm sure it's something that, again, we're all here today to talk about this, so it's not just this, it's everyone in general. We'd had some feedback, again, no site is perfect, so feedback from, again, internal surveys and also people that had left site, that we did need a bit of a change in culture, we needed a bit of a move forward. So what we decided to do was implement the allyship scheme and also promote the need for allies on site, and that anyone and everyone can be an ally. And I think that's the most important, that it doesn't matter who you are, whether you're within one of those groups, you can be an ally for someone else, or if you don't stereotypically fit into one of those groups, you definitely can be an ally. So why in particular for women in STEM? Well, the facts and figures speak for themselves, really. Now, these aren't from Phillips 66, but collated from a different sort of general various sources. Society is effectively 50-50 male and female. So if you take a sample of a group of people in a utopia, you'd expect sort of 50-50 male and female to be interested in STEM subjects, wouldn't you? So that's not what we see in society today, and that could be because of what we've got: gender bias, we've got socioeconomic differences, and different backgrounds that people come from. So you're not always going to get that 50-50 perfect balance. So it's important that what we know in our industry and how, you know, what experience that we've had, that we know we need to recognise a need for change, and we know we recognise that women are still in a minority, and it's something that we still need to be boosting and helping move forward with. And hopefully that will mean that we can leave everything better for the generations going forward. Younger than myself even. I'm now classed as an old hat in some of my positions. So now I know what you're all thinking. We know that safety and reliability can be a very important key for a business and the bottom line, but how will inclusion and diversity really help me out with this? Well, it's easy if you think about it, because if you feel valued, respected, supported in your day job, you're going to want to come to work, aren't you? You're going to want to be there, you're going to want to work hard for the company and actually want to improve everything. So you're not going to want to help the business if you're feeling neglected, and I think that's something that's really key. If you're feeling let down and not supported, then what's the easiest thing to do? You're going to want to leave, aren't you? And we're all here to talk about retention and trying to make sure that you're feeling valued in your position at work. So again, as you can see from the stats, again collected from a variety of external sources, more diverse workforces actually make better business decisions, employees have a better quality of life, and most importantly to a business, they have a better bottom line. None of us work for free, do we? At least I don't. And through allyship, we try and promote a lot of these things, and we've done so on a lot of different platforms. And not only within our refinery, but also company-wide. I mean, we have most of our headquarters and most of our sites are over in the US, so corporates more over there. And we've had members of our inclusion and diversity team actually present in company-wide sort of town halls, we call them, to company-wide, which have been celebrated by our executive leadership team and our CEO. And I think it's really important that you're getting the top-down support from that level and maintaining the momentum in what you're trying to do and actually saying, yes, this is important, we need to keep going with this. So, sort of coming to the initial bits for us. So again, like I say, we are still in our infancy of our allyship program, so I'm here to learn just as much as you guys are. So how did we get a whole site engaged in allyship and wanting to enlighten and empower a whole workforce? So there's no one solution to this, but we've tried to encompass as many people at Humber Refinery as possible with all of this. We included a rollout where we had leaflets, we had cookies, we had pins, we have helmet badge stickers, and all of these were trying to pretty much explain to people the simple definition of, well, what is an ally? Am I an ally? Who is an ally? Who wanted to come out and say, yes, I am an ally. I am someone that you can talk to. I'm someone that can be supportive. Because not a lot of people actually know that. That's one of the first things that people sort of, the bridge they come to and they go, I've got a problem, I feel like I need a bit of help, who do I go to? And actually being able to have that sort of show of support going, yes, I am someone you can talk to, it doesn't matter who you are, I'm more than happy to be a helping hand or a kind ear. And that's kind of the main part of our rollout really, is pretty much just to talk to people. I mean, again, that's the crux of a lot of these things, is people don't talk. People hide away, people think that they've not got the support, people think, oh, I'm on my own, I've not got anything that I can do about this. And really, it's just to talk, to get experiences, to actually know someone else could be going through exactly the same as what you're going through, and to go, I'm not on my own. And that's what I believe was the most important bit about this. We also have things where we have messages every month. So we highlight key business benefits every month in what we have as a key messages, but we also now frame that primarily with an I&D moment. What are our key achievements? What are our key goals that we've been looking at, or even just small things? Because we know that a lot of this starts with small changes to make the bigger changes. So we've also been doing that as well. We have things like we've created our women's network, which is actually again thriving at the moment. I think we've had some discussions earlier about women's network, and that's something that I believe wholeheartedly should be men and women, because you're not going to make any changes for women without having men involved. I mean, again, I come from an industry which is primarily men at the top, you know, that's not going to change overnight. But how you can make those changes for the women for the better is to get the men involved, to get their buy-in. You know, they all have women that work for them. So how are they going to know what problems they're going through and how to support them if you don't have a a place for the men effectively to get support. So that's one of the other ways as well. And so just as we've started off today, our conversation starter cards are again one of the really critical ways that we're using to keep the conversations going forward effectively in every single meeting. Doesn't matter what you're doing, whether it's a big company a discussion on a big project, or if it's just right, we're here to talk about how we're running the plant today. You know, a quick 5 minutes discussion just keeps it in everyone's thoughts, keeps that momentum going, keeps the allyship vibe going for everyone. So again, just continuing on for how we keep allyship empowered, because allyship isn't just for Christmas, it's something that needs to be continued, it evolves, it needs to be continued to be nurtured, because it's not going to stay the same. You know, I'm sure all of you that have got sites out there that have had similar schemes or are looking to evolve and grow, what you started out with is probably not what you've got now, because you recognise where your changes are needed, you recognise where your stumbling blocks are, what people are willing to accept, what people aren't willing to accept. So it's something that you always have to keep pressing and changing and gaining feedback and people's thoughts and experiences. We've got a lot of different site backgrounds for people, a lot of different jobs that people are doing, and they all have different thoughts and feelings exactly on allyship. And that's always, you know, something you need to keep in mind whenever you're looking at these things, because what might fit for an engineer like myself going, yeah, I can be an ally, I can do this, might not be exactly the same for an operator who is working 12-hour shifts every day. You know, they might not want to do exactly what I'm doing, but they might have different people that they want to talk to. They might want to be more shied away, for example. So after the initial rollout, we've kept our focus, and it's the most important thing is to keep learning and growing from people. And that's the most important part. Because at the end of the day, allyship is based upon, as was mentioned at the beginning, giving a voice to those who cannot speak. So we're seeing on site that the transformation is evident for ourselves. I regularly hear comments of, oh, it wasn't like this a year ago, or oh, things are definitely better now. And these things could be just throwaway remarks, you know, some people just say something in conversation. But I do think it's important that we register that these things are getting said. You know, you're trying to change a whole site culture. It's not going to change overnight. You know, just seeing small transformations of getting better and better every day for at least a site like ourselves where this is fairly new to us, you know, it's very positive. The logo that we've got for the Humber Ally, that's a massive logo for us now, very recognisable on site. And even that in itself is still very positive as a place for people to go to. So we've also got, as I mentioned, we have an inclusion and diversity team or committee on site. I'm sure lots of people sort of have something similar. And that's what we use primarily to drive a lot of these initiatives, because if you're looking at these goals sort of as one single person, or you know, looking at your leadership team, sometimes it doesn't really work, and you always just need that group of people to keep you on track, keep you on focus. And as part of that, we've used some of our team to actually come up with a strategy, which we've actually effectively got our leadership team to sign their names against and go, this is the strategy under these 3 pillars of respect, attract and support, which we use allyship to bolster, to actually keep ourselves focused, because at the end of the day, we need to keep focused on what we're trying to achieve in the first place, right? Building a better place and better support for everyone to live and work in. So just I'll lastly leave you with this. So diversity is having a seat at the table, inclusion is having a voice, and belonging is having that voice heard. And that really is what we're seeing allyship for. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Charlotte. Yeah, again, I mean, we do a lot of work on allyship at Wise, and it's always great to hear talk of how everyone has something to offer for allyship, regardless of who they are, to get people involved, and the importance of involving men at all levels of the organisation as well. So it's really great to hear that. we have 15 minutes to do a bit of a Q&A, so I don't know if Charlotte and Rebecca want to like come to the front, maybe? Or, I don't, yeah. So obviously we've got the 15 minutes now, but then also we've got the networking lunch, but if we don't get around to any questions, or we've got opportunity in the afternoon in our groups to ask questions as well and have discussions. But does anyone have anything they wanted to ask?
Yes, sorry. Charlotte, I'm really interested in the allyship cards that you
Yes.
have.
I apologise, I forgot to bring them with me today.
That's okay, yeah. So how do you use those? I mean, I have loads of ideas thinking, but how do you go forward with that and make that resource come to life?
Yep, so what we've got is effectively, we've got a pack of these cards in every single meeting room on site, and they pretty much just simply say a word, could be any word, like some equity, man, woman, I think I added ginger, because you know everyone forgets that gingers are marginalised.
I'm with you now, Charlotte.
Yes. So it's pretty much a pack of these cards, and what everyone is, we had a bit of a rollout again as part of what we're doing, is to say you'll have this pack of cards in the room, what you can do, and it's very fluid. Some people use them in different ways, some people don't. And it's impressed upon a lot of people saying, it doesn't matter how you use them, just have the pack. You either can pick a card at random and say, right, you've got this word, just talk about it. It doesn't matter in kind of what respect you talk about it. Now obviously they are pinned as the I&D conversation starter card, so pretty much people know that it's sort of the notion of you're talking about I&D, but it can just be getting people to talk to each other, just getting a conversation flowing. Some people I know have used them actually quite cleverly in a way of, I had a presentation the other day and someone said, I've picked these two cards out of this pack and I wanted to talk about these today in relation to the training you're about to do because I think these are important. And I thought that was a really clever way of using them actually, something I probably wouldn't have thought of. They do have little instructions on the back of them, pretty much just saying, use anything you can think of, and you know, it doesn't matter if you pick the word man and you just go you at someone, you know, it's not a problem, it's just a way of, again, starting a conversation, you know, because someone could go, well, why have you picked me, you know, why didn't you pick someone else in the room? And it's, yeah, that's sort of, it's a very simple idea really, because again, we were sort of coming up against the problem of, I had it so many times, someone will go, oh, I need to do an ID moment, I need to do one. Charlotte, you're a woman, you know, what do you want to talk about? I'm like, well, I'm not designated to talk about an ID, you know, I just happen to be female in this meeting. And it's something that we thought, well, safety moments are quite embedded in a lot of the industry. We often have safety moments when we're learning from experiences, you know, it's always important to learn from anything that goes wrong or goes right. And to have that sort of same vibe for an I&D moment, people don't really prepare for them in the same way because they're quite new, you know, I don't know who else maybe does that sort of thing, but to have that to sort of at least spark something, you know, that's what we've been trying to do with them. So even if you just had a pack of cards, scribbled a word on them, that would be perfect.
Yeah, well I just found some recently in a stationery cupboard from a training course that was used a few years ago, pre-COVID. So it's time to dust those off, I'm thinking.
Yes.
But the flexibility I really like. It's got to suit, and that means that anyone can adapt it to how they want it to work for them.
Yes.
Which is really important. Thank you.
Rebecca, for you, one of your slides talked about menopause training. I'm just interested why that was rolled out and how it was received, because we've tried to do something internally and got quite a lot of pushback from some elements of the workforce who, you know, this is camps that want to discuss it as a subject and camps that don't see that it has any relevance to the working environment. So yeah, just curious.
Yeah, I know. I should clarify when we talk about menopause training, but it's not a how-to, which actually would be quite useful. But it's a sort of a what is it and how does it affect everybody. So it was the content acknowledges actually kind of changes that both men and women go through at certain stages of their life. So it does focus on the female menopause, but it acknowledges the male menopause. And it positions it in such a way to say that this is important to understand in the workplace because, you know, it might be happening to you, it might be happening to a colleague, it might be happening to a family member. So, and these are the ways that it may or may not have an impact in the workplace. And it was rolled out, the communications were rolled out to all colleagues, but it's not been mandated as training. It was certainly pushed quite directly to managers, but again, not mandated to our manager level colleagues. And then there's been quite a lot of just follow-up communications, so by setting up particular kind of conversation channels that allow people for whom it resonates with to have more detailed conversations, more ongoing conversations. I mean, it's worked quite well that way.
Can I just add in, we have an app through our benefits health package called Peppy, and that's really good. And that was launched in January, I think it was, isn't it? Yeah, something like that. And it's personalised to you, so it's really nice to get an independent resource to kind of bounce ideas off as well. And the more people who talk about it, the better, as we always know with everything in life, you know, the only way of getting through some of these stereotypical views that may be out there is to talk about it. And andropause and menopause for men, and you know, it's sometimes I've seen that penny drop in my family when my dad suddenly went, now I know what you girls have been going through, when he started to go through hot flashes after radiotherapy.
I think one of the interesting things we had was quite extreme pushback from some people who were going through menopause themselves because they found the whole experience of the session triggering.
Yeah.
Which was
Yeah. And some people want to talk about it, some people don't. So it is very individualised. But that kind of support, it's like the same with you, Charlotte. Knowing the support is there is the big important thing.
The training itself is an online module, so people do it themselves, work through it at their own pace. But with the intention of it also being available as a conversation starter, it's very much kind of linked into a more overall kind of colleague wellness conversation and the flexible working conversation. So try and get the communication for all of these things sort of aligned and going in the same direction.
Yeah.
And a question to Charlotte: have you had any resistance? And if so, what are your top tips for getting over?
So we have had some resistance, but what we've been trying to do is basically we've rolled out a lot of what we've done. You know, we've had the leaflets go out, we've had the banners go out, we've had the town halls, we've had the talks, but that sort of helps to a certain extent. But what we've been doing as part of our team is pretty much going out to all the different groups. We've been going out to all of the operations teams that have been in, sort of all the shifts that have been in, the maintenance groups, the engineering groups, and pretty much just getting the feedback and saying, well, what are you disagreeing with here? You know, what are you not liking, and how can we help you with that? Because we know it's not a one size fits all job. You know, we know that. We have some people that say, well, I don't want to wear a pin, I don't want to wear a badge, I don't want to have to show people I'm an ally because people should, you know, I already know I'm supportive of people. And that's been one that's actually a lot of people have said to me, and they said, well, I don't want to wear that on my badge because people who know me know I'm someone to talk to. And I think that's quite important in the fact that you don't have to be doing all these things. You know, it's for people that don't know. You know, it's if you know that you are already an ally to someone, or you're already there and supporting someone, well, you're already doing it then. It doesn't matter. It's just trying to help some people out there that may not know that you could be supportive, or if there's someone out there that they could more likely go and talk to,
You know, so I know some of the guys that are on operations shifts, they say, well, I have people come and talk to me all the time. I'm like, well, that's great. You're already an ally. You know, you don't have to be doing all of these things that we're saying, because again, we're just trying to build a network of support for those that don't know that they've got support. So if you already got the support, then that's great. And that's sort of one of the things I've bumped up against quite a lot. But it's really just getting that feedback from people and learning from them. That's what we've found.
Oh, I think with the hand up. Oh, you were quickest off the mark, but yeah.
So, for you, from where your point of view is in the private sector,
Yes.
looking at a situation with civil service,
Mm-hmm.
where they have unions to support them, I think you may know where I'm coming from. Health and Wellbeing Allies
Yes.
is my wife is a Health and Wellbeing Ally for the union. She works in probation service. A huge amount of stress, struggles, which similar does work with STEM.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot involved there. Do you think that working alongside unions would support your cause? Sorry, the cause, not your cause.
So I think that, I mean, like you say, unions are always working for the betterment of the people that are in their union, right? So I think as long as you're...
Oh, sorry, and outside the union.
And outside the
Yes.
union.
Yes.
Sorry. So I think if you're working with and without that union, if you're working towards that common goal of better mental health support, you know, better wellbeing support, and just in general having that system there of people that can help you, I think you can do it. Yes. I think it's where, and again, I don't have a lot of experience with unions, so I think it's where you fall down is where the union are working towards one thing, and in general the workplace or the civil service could be working towards something else. So I think it can be done. Yes.
I think you're right, apart from not challenging what you're saying, is the fact that this is about retention. Health and wellbeing is about retention of people.
Mm-hmm.
Keeping people in place because they don't want to go anywhere.
Yes.
They enjoy the job. They enjoy the career. But is it more so looking at the whole goal of liking to work when you want to work, and the obstacles you've got are just hurdles to come up to get over from ally networking, and having that kind of system in place where the kilometre you've got going, there is that section saying, well, that's the health and wellbeing, just like yourself is doing allyships. Would that be an important part of majority of larger companies and small ones, obviously, that it's there for you?
Yes.
So you don't have to be a union, you don't have to be part of you, but they can just listen to you and work with you.
Yes. Yeah, definitely. Because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter who you are or what your situation is. You've got support, and I think that is the most important bit.
Thanks, John.
Just also to add to that, I mean, before I worked for Wise, I worked in the rail industry, which is obviously very heavily unionised, and I worked in the in-house EDI team for Network Rail, and we used to have quarterly meetings with the RMT, with Unite, and with TSSA, all of whom have their own. So like TSSA and RMT have EDI officers who work focus on specifically the union element of like EDI work, and so in that sort of unionised environment, it's often a much more kind of like integrated approach. And yes, obviously they have like the safety council, the maintenance council, the operations council, all of which has an impact on policies and practices which impact on inclusion, but they also have specific inclusion officers themselves, and I imagine that's probably similar in a lot of like unions as well.
Yeah, also a question for Charlotte. I'm just interested in how you kind of operated your allyship, really. So someone gets an ally badge.
Mm-hmm.
Does that mean anyone on the site can approach them, or are they dedicated to a team or departments, or?
No, it means anyone can approach them. If they put the pin on and said, I'm an ally, literally that means you are there to support anyone. If someone feels like they don't want to support general people, I guess that's up to them. We've not really found that. We have found that
was the difficulty, yeah.
yes, we found that in general, people have put that pin on and they've gone, I'm happy to speak to anyone. We've also got, for more specific issues, like more in-depth mental health, we've also got a section of our site that are trained properly in mental health and first aid. So if someone feels like they've got more of a medical or they want to talk more deeply about something rather than just, I need a bit of help, we've got those more trained up, and they've also got their own separate pins and lanyards and things to identify those as well. But in general, if someone's put a pin on, for example, I've got my lanyard with me and I've got a pin on, if anyone came to me and said, look, can I have a bit of support, can I talk about something, I'm there for anyone on site, it doesn't matter who they are. Yeah.
So, I think that brings us to 12:30, or just about. Charlotte and Rebecca are both going to be here throughout the rest of the day as well, so you'll be able to talk to them over lunch or in the groups in the afternoon and get more insights from them. We've got an hour for lunch now. Just wanted to point out that we have Kay on the My Skills My. Are you attending the My Skills My Life table, or are you just sat there, Kay?
I actually can't be when I was just sitting.
Okay. Well, okay. I thought Catherine had been usurped by Kay, but Catherine will be sat on the My Skills My Life table. And My Skills My Life is Wise's outreach tool. So if your organisation is looking at kind of diversifying your outreach, particularly reaching young women and girls to get them into STEM, great. Catherine is our kind of authoritative, passionate leader on that side of things. So we're going to talk to her about that. There's tea, coffee, light lunch, and we'll be reconvening to start the kind of the roundtable discussions at 1:30 this afternoon. So I just want to say thanks again, both of you, for your sessions this morning, and we look forward to hearing more from you both in the afternoon. And yeah, time for lunch.